Hello and welcome to the Blogging Goth on YouTube. I'm your host Tim Sinister and I'm out here getting interviews with the great, the good and the goth, all about this funny little subculture we find ourselves saddled with. In previous articles I've talked about how important festivals are to the UK goth scene, and I'm delighted to learn that there was going to be a UK Goth Festival happening right here where I live in Newcastle upon Tyne. So I've managed to get some time in with one of the promoters, Rick. Rick, how are you doing?
Hi Tim, I'm good, thank you. Thank you for your time today on this lovely Sunday.
Yeah. No, it's my pleasure, man. Glad to get you in and get talking to you. So, I think one of the things we want to get to first is just kind of find out a bit more about you. What's your background and what kind of brought you into the slightly frightening land of being a promoter?
Yeah, so a bit of a mix. So I played in bands since I was a teenager, and I've always sort of taken, with every band I've been in, I've just always taken a bit of a view that, you know, it's easy falling into a bit of a mold where like maybe you're not getting booked or like festivals aren't booking you and all that kind of stuff. So just go ahead and do it yourself. Do you know what I mean? It's like just crack on with it. Hire a PA system, get a venue. You know, if it's a good sort of gig, most venues are going to be like biting your hand off anyway, that kind of thing. And it just sort of like stemmed from there really. So I've been booking like DIY shows for my own band on bands over time, which I've always done. And then as you're doing that, you just kind of like you know, you're in the game. You kind of have an understanding of how things work, some of like the politics and all that kind of stuff. And I just sort of like, you know, when my last band kind of like just gave up the ghost, so to speak. Yeah, we just me and a mate of mine, Paul, we just started putting on just like the odd sort of gig ourselves, mainly like the sort of like the punk genre, but we had a couple of like gothy type ones as well, and yeah, so yeah, so that's kind of how I got into it, just over time really, just like I say, just it's never been like my main kind of like bread and butter, but it's just always something I've enjoyed doing. A bit selfishly as well, sometimes to my detriment. It was always just kind of like my sort of like mad idea. I'll put on if I book it like an all day with all my favourite local bands and like call it like some sort of bizarre name and choose the artwork and put it in like a former library in the middle of the Gateshead somewhere. So like, it'd be fantastic, it'd be wonderful, and like and sometimes they are. Do you know what I mean? And sometimes it can. You know, it's just like obviously, well, this was a vanity project, so we live and we learn. We just like. But yeah, so it's but yeah, to cut a long story short, that's just kind of how it is, you know, just a DIY kind of approach to things.
No, I like it, man. That sounds really familiar. I think if you talk to a lot of other bands kind of doing the same circuit as you, they'll say the same, that run into the walls, they just play in the same spots here and there and everywhere. You know, we'll get into the lineup soon, but I see a few familiar names on there. Mates that we both have in the scene who are just, you know, playing the same gigs in the same places and often just not getting the kind of recognition they get. So I think I've said elsewhere that what really needs to happen is there needs to be a lot more grassroots organising, a lot more people going out there and creating the nights and the events that they want to see, because there is a lack of promoters, but I hope you would agree there is a massive audience for kind of alternative music, kind of both nationally and here in the Northeast where we are.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's getting better now than maybe what it has been. And this is just a personal opinion from, you know, a bit of, sometimes it, you know, my last band I think was kind of like, you describe it more as like goth adjacent, I think, rather than like probably like just like full on goth. I'm sure you'd agree with that. And it was, you know, it's a little bit of an outside looking in perspective. I think over time it is kind of building up. I've always sort of like been a bit kind of pulling my hair out, so to speak, and I don't have much left these days, so I've got to be careful. But sorry, dad joke there for you. I'm a dad. It's you look at Europe and where it's like it's huge, and you look at like America now where it's starting to like really pick up. You know, like the kind of the names escape me, but like the massive festivals they're having over there now, which I don't. If I'm being honest, I know they tried it. I don't know if you could have as successfully in this country. But speaking to other promoters, sort of like recently in booking agents, I think there was a bit of a revival coming through now, like the younger crowd. I think Newcastle's a bit of a tricky one because, you know, you compare us to like places like Leeds and London. Obviously, like half of our sort of like radius is the North Sea. You know, you can't you don't really you don't really have that sort of pull, but sorry, that sort of like center kind of what's the word for center magnetism pulling people in from all sides. It's a bit weird in that sense, but yeah, I'm optimistic, and we put on one of the headliners for this. I'm sorry, I know you said you get onto it, but like a couple of years ago, we put on like Incubus, Succubus at like the Central and Gateshead, and that sold out. Yep. So I think it's there. I think it's it just needs. I think, like you say, just people to do like the legwork a little bit, because it's not as a genre itself. I don't think it's in the it's not sort of like whirling around like the environment of major plays, if you like. So I think if you look at like things like BBC introducing and some like the kind of like the grant funded organisations, if you like, putting on kind of like Mercury Awards and all that kind of stuff. It's not within that sort of like sphere yet, but I think so it will need a bit more sort of like boots on the ground, so to speak. But there's people doing that, and so fingers crossed it works out. And those guys as well, they work a lot harder than me. So people like Shinji and Damien doing their things. They've been really consistent, and just I'm just like a bit of a guy just dropping in and out here and there, putting things on. So the credit to those two.
Absolutely. No, I do think that we are blessed actually in Newcastle. We don't have the kind of mass power that London has or the history that Leeds has, but I think there is still a surprisingly vibrant alt community here, and it is getting well served by long-standing promoters, as you've described. But this is, of course, the first time that anybody's really kind of put it all together to form a festival, which is the exciting kind of next step from just a gig night. So I am very excited about it, and this seems like the perfect moment then to segue into the lineup. It's on screen now. So we're looking at Tyne, which will be held on Friday the 13th and Saturday the 14th of November. You big stereotype, you. And we've got headliners. Yeah, you mentioned Incubus, Succubus, absolutely classic kind of gothic rock, romantic goth. Legends, veterans of many years, and 1919 themselves have been going since the golden days, really, with a few lineup changes, of course, because that happens to everyone. But you've got a couple of very heavy hitters there. So let's get into it. Who came first? Was there one you really wanted, or did it build off the success you already had with Incubus, Succubus?
So I've always wanted to get Incubus, Succubus back. Like, great band, lovely people as well.
Yes.
Really nice guys. And obviously the last gig was successful. So when I started speaking to like Tony about getting them back, it just sort of like just set the the inner cogs whirring, so to speak. I thought, well, actually, if they're coming in on Saturday, maybe we could turn this into a bit of a weekend thing, where we do the typical thing, charge one ticket for the whole weekend, day tickets, night tickets if people want to come down. I just started putting the feelers out to try and see who would be kind of interested in that. 1919, we've again, my old band, we gigged with those previously. Your good self hooked us on with those, Tim, if I remember rightly.
Yes.
And they were, and so there you go. I mean, it was quite a while ago now. It was possibly close to like 8 or 9 years. So I thought that in itself, the fact that they haven't been in the region for quite a while, would be quite good. Marketing sounds cynical, doesn't it? But
you've got to have some sense of how to make this thing work, because it's not going to run entirely on goodwill. As much as we've got buckets of that, you have to be a bit practical about it. So I get where you're coming from.
Yeah. So and like you say, they've been, we have to be sort of like honest with these things. I think for the younger generation to come up, I think you do, as you can see all around the country, people like a good classic headliner, don't they? So I think for the first outing, I thought, let's stick to like the tried and tested method, and both have been going for quite a while, very, very highly thought of. I think, even with like the 1919 lineup changes, if you go and listen to their music now, which they're still making, it's still very good music, and it's still very much, it's not derivative, trying to say that word. But they're still making music sort of in like the sort of like the same sort of like vibe as what they did originally. You know, it's not like two very distinct bands now that are like kind of like that came into existence and one's still touring. And they're still very much to me like 1919, still putting out good music, still very good musicians. Still some original members. So it's really happy with what we've got. For a first attempt at this, I'm very privileged that we could get those guys in.
That's what we like to see, yeah. We could probably have a whole separate conversation about what constitutes like a kind of festival headliner in UK Goth and what's achievable, but that might be a conversation for another time. I want to focus very much on Tyne. So let's dig a little bit deeper. I see By Gemini supporting 1919 on the Friday. Am I right in saying that's your outfit?
That is my new band, yes. And so again, very cynically, I'm like kind of does that look kind of what?
A bit nepotistic, you know.
I was gonna say nepotism. Does it apply when it's yourself or when? Because I thought nepotism was friends, but you'll know far better than me, being an academic, Tim. It is a bit nepotism, isn't it? It's in that sense, but I think we've sort of I kind of kept it under wraps that I started a new band because for a long time I was just like I don't want to do this ever again. And then we just did it. We did a cover of a Cure song called Burn, and obviously the Cure are my favourite band. And it's for a compilation that a online magazine called God Is in the TV were doing, and so we submitted that, and they made the compilation, and it still exists if anyone wants to kind of buy it. It's still in mine. And I thought that's great, and I did that once my old band finished, and then I saw that like kind of Robert Smith himself had actually shared it on social media via the Cure, not the song but the compilation, and I'm like kind of like, do you know what? I'll keep keeping it real. I'm sure he hasn't like listened intricately to every single submission that was made on there and thought, but the fact that he did it, I think it just sort of like brought the magic home a little bit more. For me. So I was really shocked, and I thought, do you know what? Like all the kind of like negatives that I've taken away from being in bands over the years, you only need one kind of like positive thing in that sense, and it just brings it all home again. So we started, and we did, and I've taken ages with it, to be quite honest as well. I'm not under any kind of illusion of making it like famous or anything like that anymore, or that kind of thing. But yeah, and we did our first gig in Manchester last year. So I'm just thinking that's just and as well, if I book myself, I don't have to pay me. So obviously these things have to break even, unfortunately, to make money. And so yeah.
So I take a bit of faith. Actually, I would flip it the other way and say a promoter that's willing to put their own band up on stage in the firing line is somebody putting themselves on the line even more. So I think there's something brave about putting yourself in the lineup as well. So I don't follow you at all. That's class. Okay, moving on to Saturday. I see a couple of old friends there. We've got Byronic Sex and Exile, probably one of the best known artists out there in the romantic goth, revolutionary goth vanguard, and Golden Age and Nothing, who are a local act. So talk to me about those. What brought them to mind?
Working backwards from that, I mean, Golden Age and Nothing. We must have been my old band must have been gigging with them since about 2016, I think. Just Graham and I. I think we just ended up chatting over Facebook because there was only about like sort of like 2 or 3 goth bands in the region at that point in time. And again, when I started my old band, it was more like kind of like goth adjacent. It wasn't quite there, but we're still, especially at that point as well. It was quite kind of probably. But I was still like, well, who on earth do I book to if I do want to put on like kind of like more sort of like goth post-punk all day type things? So yeah, I think I just saw him advertising the gig, and I was just like messaged, and we just sort of like been mates.
They're good guys. They're good guys, and you're right. They've been going for so long, and I think again, harking back to what we were saying earlier about how hard it can be to find an outlet just to play. They really should have been more kind of high profile. They had an amazing electric live show and just really sincere, heartfelt intense songs, and it is criminal that they haven't gotten more kind of.
It is. I think, and both Grahams in that band are just absolutely, just incredibly lovely guys. And yeah, you're right that in terms of the actual presentation, it's very original music. It's really hard to see any sort of like obvious influences in there. I'm sure if you listen to more intricate music, you probably could find some, but it's just been consistently good output as well. And even like Graydon's like side projects, it carries across. He's just like a really good songwriter. And yeah, so it's nice to give them a platform to come back and hopefully get a bit of an audience looking at what they're doing, and maybe encourage them to like release a new album or something like that.
There you go, guys. You've got your orders. Time to crack on. Okay, then let's turn to the very flamboyant, very recognisable Baron XX in Exile. Talk to me about your impressions of Joel Hayes.
Oh, sure. He's again a lovely guy. I think so. Joel, when I first, I think I met him at a Northeast gig actually. Yeah, I went and saw him play at the Globe. And it was like a very bit, if I remember rightly, it was a bit of like a rushed conversation. We had a bit of a chat at the end, and kind of like, I think I gave him like a CD of Ghost Signals at the time, and he said, "Yeah, I'll have a listen to it." And then he disappeared off with the other bands into the night, off to Glasgow, wherever it was that they were playing next. And you never know when you give people these things whether they'll whether they'll sort of like follow up on their pledge to listen to it, or they would just go in the bin or what, you know what I mean? But yeah, we I think over time Joel did thankfully listen to that, and we did get invited to play at the Goth City Festival that he had on a few years ago. I think it might have been the last one actually. I could be wrong, but yeah. But again, that was I think that evidenced that, I talked about like my old band. I don't want to lean too heavy into constant talk, but we're more seen as like goth adjacent, and I think some of like the purists, if you like. Never really kind of like liked that, and Joel was actually someone who took a chance. He wasn't, he listened to the songs. He invited us down to play, which was a bit of a risk in itself. If you're not like to play a goth festival, you're not like a full on goth act, if you like. And I mean, to be fair, I suppose by the time we wrote our album, like a lot of the songs like a lot darker and stuff than what they were originally anyway. So I just thought, that's what a canny bloke doing, taking a chance like that. It was really nice. So anytime he's like sort of played the Northeast, since then, I've always went out my way to try and make it where I can. But again, just a really, I think if you were to speak to other bands in the region, other bands throughout the country, I think his approach like that, just being very fair. It's always been consistent across the board. I think everyone probably owes Joel a favour in that sense. You know what I mean? Yeah, as a musician, as a performing outfit, very highly thought of. Played with like a lot of good people, and there's has a following throughout the UK. So
well known.
So I think at risk of it sounding both of them, I think I've given like a long diatribe about how I know both of them and they're really nice guys, and the nepotism comes out again. Actually, they are really, really good performing outfits.
It's tried and tested acts that you can rely on, functionally, and also will put on a decent show. So no, I totally get where you're coming from. And in particular, Baron XX and Exile, I think they've got the same ethos. Joel is a one-man promotional machine, tours everywhere, puts on his own gigs, is prolific on social media. I think the last thing he recorded was like a guerrilla gig in the Borgo Pass in Romania as part of some massive promotion for his next album. I'll have to link it from here.
Do you know what? I love stuff like that though.
Exactly.
I love any kind of like where you're playing somewhere like a little bit out of the ordinary. You're doing a little bit of a theme to a gig. It just makes it far more. I talked about like that gigs in like the old library in Gateshead and all that kind of stuff. Bring your own booze and all these. It just makes it far easier to sell to people. Than just saying I'm playing in like the the Dug and Dock dog and duck down the road, and like, or I'm playing just like kind of insert corporate venue here, or so, just all that sort of stuff. I think it's absolutely.
This is something else. No, I appreciate that. This is unique and distinctive, so it's good to have. There's obviously still some gaps to be filled. Can you tease anybody coming up? Have you got any splash announcements you can make?
I can let you know now that so we're sort of like, obviously the Friday is going to be like a Friday evening. I'm not expecting people to book half days from work or that to come down early, but the Saturday we're trying to look at expanding a bit and trying to put a bit more activities on throughout the day. So we do have Kev Morris. So again, he's going to be DJ. Yeah. So again, another well-established promoter in the scene. We've got specializes in like kind of like goth and like metal and rock events and all that kind of stuff. It's his birthday weekend as well, so he's coming down just to DJ for beer. So that's great. So we don't have any kind of like announcements in terms of more bands yet, because I think we've got to be again, with it being its first year, and we've had a lot of people ask to play as well, which I appreciate, by the way, because it's nice that people sort of see something which they think is going to be a positive thing and they want to be a part of it, which is good. But it's at the same time, if you are like an ethical promoter, then it means that you're going to have to pay people to if they join the lineup. And until we know it's absolutely going to like kind of like be a full-on success and break even, and there's going to be like capacity within the budget, we're sort of like, I'm just playing it a bit safe. It's got off to a good start. So it's always like 25%. A quarter of the tickets have gone. So and it's only it's only March, and the thing's not until November. But there's always like that kind of like initial sort of like flurry of excitement when you announce these things, and then so if we get to sort of like summer and we're a bit closer, then I'll start making some inquiries that way. But yeah.
So people will be following you, keeping an eye out for any updates.
Yes.
That's brilliant. Just out of interest then, where can people find out more? We might as well flag that.
Yeah, so we don't really have like a promoter name as such. So but on Instagram I've created like an account called Post Punk of the North, which is just all one sort of like word, so to speak. So yeah, just at Post Punk of the North, and you can see everything on there. And obviously there's like Facebook events which have been created, which you can follow all announcements on there.
I guess I also just wanted to, at the end now, to kind of pick your brains about the scene more widely. We've kind of hinted at it here and there, but it's a tricky one to tackle because you've got to get past initially the kind of almost metaphysical ask, which is goth a music-based subculture, which comes up more times than I can count on social media with a lot of, I think, misunderstandings. Now, you're coming at it from a unique position. You love The Cure, but you consider yourself goth adjacent, not like true goth. Like, what are you measuring your gothness by?
That's an interesting one.
Because I
guess I do love goth music. Very, very, very shamedly. Probably, yes, I do listen to like a lot of 80s goth music, but I do love like new stuff as well. But yeah, I've got a young family these days, so I don't tend to go out as much as I used to. But I used to love going to goth nights. I used to love going to your goth night, and obviously you would see me there, just like dressed head to toe in black still, the eyeliner on, the nail paint, all that kind of stuff. So I do love the subculture. I do love the music. I wouldn't say it was like kind of exclusively me. There are like indie sort of like electro bands that I do love. My new band that we just mentioned, I wouldn't say it's like exclusively goth, so to speak. It's certainly darker than what my previous one would be, but it's more drawing on like influences like Depeche Mode and like Tears for Fears and all that kind of stuff. So it's like it's very so yes, we will have a drum machine, so that makes us more goth night, doesn't it?
That's absolutely
so yeah,
vital.
yeah. I feel like with any good subculture, it has maybe like kind of like unofficial rules that you need to stick to.
Yeah.
But I don't think that should be done in sort of like a gatekeeper way. Do you know what I mean? If someone turns up to a goth night in like jeans and a white t-shirt or something like that, then you know, as I'm sure most goths would, they'd be absolutely fine with that. It's not going to be like a kind of, and you never know, in a few weeks' time you'll then like come back with a long leather jacket and sunglasses indoors and all, you know. But it's yeah, I think I do sort of feel like there is kind of, you know, you need to, there is adherence that needs to be done. I don't, but again, it's just such a weird one. I mean, things sort of like drip into each other as well. Do you know what I mean? You can have like what you'd call, I guess, like to the wider world. When I said to someone the other day, like, oh, I listen to like goth music and that kind of thing, they'd be like, oh, you like bands like My Chemical Romance, and do you, and all that. And I think it's not necessarily something I would class as goth. I still lean in like the whole like classic type vibe, but again, that's not to say there's not opportunities there for people like that, like the youth to actually kind of like just start expanding their horizons more and fall into that, which I think is probably what happened as well. So that's a very kind of, I don't think I've given you a straight answer there, and I think there is
one. I just like to put people on the spot with that one, because it is tricky to define, and you do find yourself oscillating between these camps of pretty strict gatekeepery, which you see a lot of online. You can't be goth unless you like this, and this. And then at the other end, people are like, you know, I just want to pick up goth girls, and it's like, wow, that's the only reason you're here. Damn, that's just disappointing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just such a weird one. It's like, yes, gatekeeping shouldn't be a thing.
Sure.
But I feel like, yes, adherence, if you do want to kind of, does help.
Yeah.
But it's not the end of the world. At the same time, I've heard stories about like kind of like people going to like Whitby festivals dressed as Daleks and all this kind of stuff, and I'm like, kind of, I don't know if that's like.
I've got my own. Yeah, I think in some of my reviews on the blog, I've talked about how Whitby's kind of turning into this kind of Comic-Con experience now, with kind of the music part of it drifting out, and you can just have interminable, pointless arguments with people on Facebook comments about this, and it just gets nobody anywhere. So I guess it's all a case of, you have to decide what you're going for and what you want to enjoy, and then what that makes you. You know, do you feel that you are aligned to a particular group or a particular style or a particular subculture? It will be interesting. You should do a poll on the door when you open the doors at night time and say, right, what do you consider yourself? You know, not gatekeepering. You know, this is not like a
You're not coming in.
Exactly. You don't have 3 separate Bauhaus albums on vinyl. Get the fuck out of here. You know, we're not saying that, but it will be interesting. Just, I'm always fascinated by how people classify themselves. You know, when I've put on some of these classic bands myself, you get a lot of people who consider themselves retired goths. You know, like, oh, I used to be back in the day, but now, you know, circumstances are taking me out of it. And for me, I always find that a bit strange, because I can't think of anything that would take out. I'd happily identify. I wouldn't be here doing this damn website if I didn't. But it is interesting, the things that can change and how that changes how you define yourself. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah. It's it reminds me of that. I used to be a punk, guys. You quite often see, don't you? And like, they're just, I don't know. It's one of those weird things with age, isn't it? About like the, you know, just fear of missing out just completely dissipates, and you're quite happy just being a regular dude, and that's fair enough as well. But yeah, you do sometimes get people come out just to try and just recapture the vibe. I don't want to say recapture the youth, because no one's really recapturing the youth, really, are they? But yeah, it's and that's, you know, that's sort of nice, I guess. But yeah, I think your point is like, well, why are you checking out if it's something you still enjoy? I don't know. I mean, it's the one. I mean, I remember we talk about like kind of like grassroots level goths. Goth events struggling, or goth clubs struggling. you know, I've got on touring goth bands before where there's only been like 10 people turned up or something like that, and it's heartbreaking. But then, yeah, and the common excuse is just like, you know, the scene's not there anymore, or people just you know, just aren't interested. But then you'll go and see the Mission at Newcastle Uni, and like it'll be packed out, absolutely packed, and the bar is absolutely jammed. And it'd be the same for like when Sisters of Mercy, who are quite often you know, a lot of the views on their live performances these days are quite disparate, aren't they? But they still sell out like kind of like 1,000 and all that kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
I don't know how true that is, by the way, because I wasn't there. So you know, I think just enjoy what you enjoy at the end of the day, to me. But yeah, but I think it's there's sort of like no middle ground there, is there? It's just like always. Yeah. So I think, yeah, to sum up, yeah, it'd be nice, I think, if more of the Thai goths came to sort of like the lower level stuff. And hey, they might enjoy it, and might come out of retirement or just semi-retire. I don't know. Just yeah.
No, it's a good shout. It's a good shout. You know, talk about some of these classic bands. I'm reminded of events like legendary Futurama in the early 80s. That saw a lot of absolutely classic post-punk bands absolutely balloon up, and it's like that can happen again. You know. And I think that's the only thing I always want to see on a festival is new bands I've never seen before. I want to see young, hungry, fresh bands coming out and being like, we're continuing the sound, we're continuing that experimentation, because we can't always rest on the shoulders of the 80s greats.
You can't, and the sort of like grim truth is they're eventually not going to be here. Do you know what I mean? So you know, we talk about lineup changes and all that kind of stuff. It's some of those lineup changes because people are sadly no longer here, or they're too ill to perform, and you know, life is very short. So yeah, so you're right. You've got to try and build up the scene from other means. But again, that comes back to my little annoyance in that why all the really kind of like pertinent new bands coming through, they're either all American or they're all from Europe. You're not really seeing it kind of coming from the UK. And then those bands will tour the UK, and they'll be the ones that like sell really well, and like they are. So yeah, so I don't know what, given that like the genesis of like goth, if you like, was from a musical point of view perspective anyway, was the UK. We just seem to have it's sort of like propagated elsewhere, and sort of doesn't seem to be as rising as fast. In that fingers crossed it will again. Do you know what I mean? I think it's gonna fall to people like me banging the drum, people like you running events, and both of us going along to these gigs to see any new bands cropping up. That's where it starts. So that seems like a really good place to remind people to go and check out Nighttime. Get your tickets early. Give Rick the confidence he needs to book more bands and run this thing again. Remind me again of that Instagram handle. It's Post Punk of the North.
There we go. And I will add that into the video so people can link straight through and pick up their tickets. Right, okay then. Rick, I've taken up enough of your valuable time. Thanks so much for dropping in, man. And I will see you at the Central Bar in Gateshead on Friday the 13th of November and Saturday the 14th of November. Thanks very much, man.
Thank you very much, Tim, for giving me a platform to talk about this. Really appreciate it, and take care. And bring back Newcastle. It needs to be done. Yeah.
I'm intrigued. We could be getting those bands out sooner than later. That sounds good to me, Rick.
Oh, good. Excellent.
Cheers, man.
Excellent. Good stuff. All right, take care, man. See you soon.